Welcome, friends, to a touching story that will show us that sometimes the greatest miracles can emerge from life's most unexpected turns. Enjoy the story. Stephen Mitchell stood in the doorway of their new apartment, watching his 5-year-old son Dylan dart between stacked moving boxes like a pinball. The afternoon sun streamed through bare windows, casting long shadows across the empty rooms that would soon become their home. "Daddy, look how big my room is!" Dylan's excited voice echoed off the walls. "Can I put Mom's picture right here by my bed?" Stephen's heart clenched. 2 years after Ashley's death, Dylan still kept her memory alive with an intensity that sometimes took his breath away. The worn photograph of the three of them at the beach, Ashley's last good day, went everywhere Dylan did. "Sure, buddy. As soon as Grandma Marie gets here, we'll hang all our pictures." "Is she coming on the train? Can we go watch the trains after?" Stephen smiled despite himself. "She is, and maybe we can if we get enough unpacking done first." He checked his phone. No messages from the base yet. This transfer had been a godsend, a chance to start fresh with a promotion and the promise of stability. No more deployments. No more leaving Dylan with his mother while he served in combat zones. After losing Ashley, Stephen couldn't bear the thought of his son losing another parent. The memories washed over him as he began unpacking the kitchen. Ashley's diagnosis just months after Dylan's 3rd birthday, the rapid decline that followed, those final precious moments when she'd smiled at him one last time before slipping away. She'd been so young, so full of life despite her harsh start in foster care. "Life's too short for regrets," she'd always said. "Daddy?" Dylan's small voice pulled him back to the present. "Can we put the starlights up in my room? The ones Mom liked?" "Of course we can, champ. Let's find that box." As they searched through their belongings, Stephen thought about how different Dylan was from other kids his age. More serious, more aware. Sometimes he caught his son studying Ashley's photo with such concentration, as if trying to memorize every detail of her face. The sound of a car door made Dylan rush to the window. "Grandma's here, and she brought her famous cookies. I can smell them." Sure enough, Marie Mitchell's distinctive laugh floated up from the street below. Stephen watched his mother emerge from her car, arms loaded with bags. She'd been their rock these past 2 years, helping them navigate life without Ashley, while somehow knowing exactly when to step back and let them figure things out on their own. "Well," Marie announced as she swept through the door, "I see you boys have made a fine mess of things already. Good thing I'm here to sort you out." Dylan launched himself into her arms. "Grandma, did you bring the snickerdoodles? What kind of grandmother would I be if I didn't?" She hugged him close, then gave Stephen a knowing look over Dylan's head. "And I brought something else too. My organizational skills. This place needs a woman's touch." Marie's prediction proved true. Within hours, the bare apartment began transforming under her experienced touch. She directed Stephen and Dylan like a seasoned general, turning chaos into order with each unpacked box. "The photos go here," she declared, arranging frames on the mantel. "Ashley should be the first thing people see when they walk in." Stephen watched as his mother placed the largest photo, their wedding portrait, in the center. Ashley's smile seemed to light up the room, just as it had in life. She'd been so beautiful that day, practically glowing with joy, despite having no family of her own to attend. "Tell me about the wedding again, Grandma," Dylan requested, carefully holding a smaller frame. "The part where Mom's dress got caught in the door." Marie laughed. "Oh, that poor dress. Your mother was so worried about having everything perfect, and then she got stuck trying to leave the church. But you know what she did?" She laughed, just threw her head back and laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. "That was Mom," Stephen said softly. "She could always find the bright side." Even at the end, when the cancer had ravaged her body, Ashley had maintained that spirit. He remembered their last real conversation, just days before she died. "Promise me something," she'd whispered, her once vibrant voice barely audible. "Promise you won't let Dylan forget how to laugh. Don't let my death shadow his whole life." "I promise," he'd said, holding her fragile hand. "But you're going to get better. The doctors—" "Shh." She'd squeezed his fingers with what little strength she had left. "We both know that's not true. Just promise me you'll both keep living. Really living, not just existing." Now, watching Dylan help Marie arrange kitchen supplies, Stephen wondered if he'd kept that promise. They were surviving, yes, but were they really living? Stephen James Mitchell, Marie's voice cut through his thoughts. Stop brooding and come help me with these curtains. Ashley would have my head if I let you turn this place into a man cave. That made Dylan giggle. What's a man cave, Grandma? A sad place where men think beige is a decorating scheme and pizza boxes are wall art? She winked at Stephen. Your father tried that in college. Lucky for him, your mother had better taste. As they worked, Marie filled the apartment with stories about Ashley. Not just the sad final days, but the happy times, the silly moments, the little details that made her real to Dylan. She'd always had a gift for that, for keeping Ashley's memory alive without letting grief overwhelm them. By evening, the apartment had been transformed. Warm colors brightened the walls, family photos created a timeline of love and loss, and Ashley's favorite throw blanket draped across the couch as if she'd just left it there. Now, Marie announced. Who's hungry? I saw a promising little Italian place down the street. Can we have pizza? Dylan asked hopefully. Actually, Stephen said, why don't we do something different? Something new? He remembered Ashley's words about really living. That Thai place we passed looked interesting. Dylan's eyes widened. With the funny noodles? Exactly. What do you say we try an adventure? Marie's approving smile told him he'd made the right choice. As they headed out into the evening, Stephen felt something he hadn't in a long time, a sense of possibility, of life moving forward instead of standing still. The morning of Dylan's first day at Little Sprouts Preschool dawned bright and clear. Stephen watched his son meticulously pack and repack his Spider-Man backpack, making sure Ashley's photo was safely tucked in the front pocket. Remember, buddy? Stephen said as they walked the 3 blocks to school. Mrs. Bennett is expecting you. Grandma Marie says she's known her for years. Dylan nodded solemnly. Do you think the other kids will like me? The question made Stephen's heart ache. Dylan had always been a little different from other children his age. More serious, more thoughtful. Ashley used to say he had an old soul. Of course they will. Just be yourself. Sarah Bennett met them at the classroom door, her warm smile immediately putting both father and son at ease. She was younger than Stephen had expected, with kind eyes and an air of quiet competence. You must be Dylan, she said, kneeling to his level. I hear you're quite the helper at home. Dylan straightened proudly. I helped Grandma organize all the kitchen cupboards yesterday. She says I have a good eye for detail, just like my mom. Sarah's expression softened as she glanced at Stephen. They discussed Dylan's situation over the phone. She knew about Ashley, about the importance of handling mentions of his mother with care. Well, we could certainly use a good organizer in our art corner. Would you like to see it? As Dylan followed Sarah into the classroom, Stephen noticed how he unconsciously touched his backpack where Ashley's photo rested. They'd discussed whether bringing it was a good idea, but Marie had been firm. Let him carry her with him until he's ready to let go. Children know what they need. He'll be fine, Sarah assured Stephen quietly. We'll take good care of him. I know, it's just... Stephen struggled to find the words. After Ashley died, it was just us. Then Mom moved in to help, and now you're trusting someone new with your most precious person, Sarah finished. It's natural to be nervous, but look, he's already making friends. Sure enough, Dylan was showing another boy how to properly sort the colored markers. The other child watched in fascination as Dylan explained his system. That's Mason, Sarah said. He could use a friend who knows how to organize things. Stephen smiled, remembering Ashley's methodical approach to everything from grocery shopping to battle plans against cancer. He gets that from his mother. Good traits have a way of living on, Sarah observed. Now go on. He needs to see you trust this process. Stephen called out, Have a great day, buddy. I'll pick you up this afternoon. Dylan waved, already absorbed in his marker sorting mission. Stephen lingered a moment longer, watching his son navigate this new world. Ashley would be proud, he thought. Their boy was growing up. The day passed in a blur of military paperwork and orientation meetings. Stephen checked his phone probably more times than necessary, but no calls came from the school. No emergencies, no tears, no problems. When he arrived for pickup, Dylan was in the playground with a small group of children, apparently teaching them some complex game involving chalk circles and elaborate hand movements. "He's a natural leader," Sarah commented, appearing beside Stephen, "and so gentle with the other children. You should be very proud." "I am," Stephen said softly. "We both are." But something in Sarah's expression made him pause. She seemed to be studying Dylan with an odd intensity. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "Oh yes," she said quickly. "It's just... Has anyone ever mentioned... Never mind, it's probably nothing." Before Stephen could press further, Dylan spotted him and came running. "Daddy, guess what? I made 3 new friends and we're going to build the biggest block tower ever tomorrow, and Mrs. Bennett says I can be her special helper with the art supplies and..." Stephen let his son's excited chatter wash over him, pushing aside Sarah's strange behavior. Dylan was happy, adjusting well. That was all that mattered. But that night, as he tucked his son into bed, Dylan said something that would change everything. "Daddy, did you know Mom sent me a sister?" "What do you mean, buddy?" Stephen asked, his heart skipping a beat. Dylan had never shown signs of magical thinking about Ashley before. He'd always been remarkably clear-eyed about his mother's death, even at such a young age. "Katie," Dylan said matter-of-factly, arranging his stuffed animals in their precise order. "She looks just like me. Even Mrs. Bennett said so. She said it was uncanny." He pronounced the word carefully, clearly repeating something he'd heard. Stephen sat on the edge of the bed, trying to keep his voice casual. "Lots of kids look similar, champ." "No, Daddy. She looks exactly like me. Same eyes, same nose, same everything. Except she's a girl." Dylan turned to him with Ashley's serious expression. "Do you think Mom sent her to keep me company?" That night, after Dylan was asleep, Stephen called his mother. "It's probably just a coincidence," Marie said, but something in her voice sounded uncertain. "Children that age often see similarities where there aren't any." But Mrs. Bennett's reaction... Stephen rubbed his temples. "You should have seen her face, Mom, like she'd seen a ghost." The next morning, Stephen arrived at the preschool earlier than usual, determined to see this mysterious Katie for himself. He was preparing a speech about overactive imaginations when he saw her. The little girl stood in the reading corner, her dark curls exactly the same shade as Dylan's, her profile so familiar it made his chest hurt. Then she turned, and Stephen had to grab the doorframe for support. It was like seeing Dylan in a dress. The same chin, the same nose, even the same way of tilting her head slightly when concentrating. All pure Ashley, just like their son. "Mr. Mitchell?" Sarah Bennett appeared beside him, her expression concerned. "Perhaps we should talk." In her small office, Sarah pulled out a file. "Katie Anderson. She lives with her mother, Natalie. I've been trying to find a way to bring this up since yesterday, but, well, how do you tell someone something like this?" "Something like what?" Stephen's mouth felt dry. "The resemblance. It's not just surface level. They have the same birthday. They finish each other's sentences even though they just met. They automatically sit together, share food without asking, seem to know what the other is thinking." Sarah hesitated. "Mr. Mitchell, is there any possibility—" "That my late wife had a twin she never knew about?" Stephen finished. "Ashley grew up in foster care. She never knew her birth family. She always said..." His voice cracked. "She always said the hardest part was not knowing if she had siblings out there somewhere." Sarah nodded slowly. "Katie's mother picks her up at 4. Usually on Tuesdays she's a little earlier because..." The sound of children's laughter interrupted them. Through the office window, they could see Dylan and Katie sitting cross-legged on the story rug, their heads bent together over a book. The similarity was stunning, like watching the same person duplicated through some strange mirror. "They gravitated to each other immediately," Sarah said softly. "Yesterday, when Katie fell during recess, Dylan knew she was hurt before she even started crying. He was halfway across the playground, but he just knew." Stephen watched the children, his mind spinning with possibilities. Could Ashley have had a twin? And if so, what did that mean for their son, for all of them? "Would you like me to call Katie's mother?" Sarah offered. "Explain the situation?" Stephen shook his head. "No, I need to see for myself. I'll be back at pickup time." All day, he couldn't focus on anything else. He called Marie again, and she agreed to come to the school. For support, she said, but he heard the barely contained excitement in her voice. At 3:45, Stephen stood outside the preschool, his heart pounding. He'd survived combat zones, faced enemy fire, but somehow this felt more terrifying than any battlefield. Then he heard a child's voice call out, "Mommy!" and turned to see Ashley. Stephen's world tilted sideways. The woman kneeling to hug Katie was Ashley. Her face, her smile, even the way she tucked her hair behind her ear. But it couldn't be. Ashley was gone. He'd held her hand as she slipped away, had buried her. "Daddy." Dylan's worried voice seemed to come from very far away. "Daddy, why are you sitting on the ground?" He hadn't realized he'd fallen. Faces swam above him. Dylan's concerned frown, Sarah Bennett's professional calm, and her. Not Ashley. Not possible. "Stephen!" His mother's voice cut through the fog. Marie must have arrived just in time to see him collapse. "Deep breaths, son." The Ashley who wasn't Ashley stood frozen, one hand pressed to her mouth, the other gripping Katie's shoulder. The little girl looked between the adults with growing confusion. "Mommy?" Katie tugged at her mother's sleeve. "That's Dylan's daddy. Why does he look scared?" "Because," the woman said softly, her voice different from Ashley's, but still hauntingly familiar. "I think I look like someone he used to know." "You look like my mom," Dylan said matter-of-factly, pulling Ashley's photo from his backpack. "See?" The woman's hands shook as she took the photograph, her face drained of color. "Perhaps," Sarah suggested gently, "we should continue this conversation inside." In Sarah's office, introductions were made. Natalie Anderson, not Ashley, but her mirror image. The children were sent to play under a teacher's supervision while the adults tried to make sense of the impossible. "My parents, they never mentioned a twin," Natalie said, still staring at Ashley's photo. "Ashley never knew her birth family at all," Stephen managed. His head was starting to clear, but his heart still raced. "She aged out of foster care. We tried searching once, but the records were sealed." Marie studied both photos, Ashley's wedding portrait and the one of Natalie and Katie at a birthday party that Sarah had quietly retrieved from Katie's file. The resemblance is, well, it's beyond remarkable. "When did you move here?" Natalie asked suddenly. "We've lived in this neighborhood for years. How have we never—" "Just this week," Stephen said. "Military transfer. He paused, struggling. "Ashley died 2 years ago. Cancer." Natalie's hand flew to her mouth again. "Oh, God. And Katie and Dylan, they're the same age?" "Same birthday," Sarah confirmed. "October 12th. A heavy silence fell as the implications sank in. Twins separated at birth. Their children, cousins who looked like twins themselves, born on the same day. "My mother," Natalie said finally. "She might have answers, but—" She twisted her hands together. "I'm not sure I want them. What kind of person separates twins? Keeps that secret for decades?" "The kind who might have thought they had no choice," Marie said gently. "Or the kind who made a mistake they're too ashamed to face." The drive to Natalie's childhood home felt surreal. Stephen followed her car, watching Dylan and Katie chatter animatedly in their respective back seats through their windows at stoplights. Marie sat beside him, uncharacteristically quiet. "Are you ready for this?" she finally asked as they pulled into a neat suburban driveway. "No," Stephen admitted, "but I owe it to Ashley to find out." Eleanor Parker's hands trembled as she served tea in her immaculate living room. Her eyes kept darting between the children playing in the corner and the photograph of Ashley that Stephen had brought. "I never thought," she began, then stopped, started again. "You have to understand the times. Richard, their father, he was a powerful man, wealthy, married." "Mom," Natalie's voice cracked like a whip. "What are you saying?" Eleanor's shoulders sagged. "I was young, foolish. Richard promised to take care of us, but when he found out it was twins, his wife was suspicious already. He said we had to give one up, had to make it look like there was never a second baby." Stephen felt sick. "So you just threw one away? Like she meant nothing?" "No." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "I chose Natalie because she was slightly bigger, stronger. I thought I thought Ashley would have a better chance of being adopted quickly, being so beautiful. I made sure she went to a good agency. But she wasn't adopted, Marie said quietly. She grew up in foster care, alone. Eleanor collapsed into tears. I tried to find her later when Richard died, but the records were sealed and I was a coward, afraid of what Natalie would think of me. Well, now we know, Natalie said bitterly. You let them separate us. Let my sister grow up thinking nobody wanted her. And now, her voice broke. Now I can never know her. Dylan looked up from his game with Katie. But you can know me, he said simply. And I remember lots about Mom. I can tell you everything. The adults fell silent, struck by the child's wisdom. Katie scrambled up to hug her mother. Don't cry, Mommy. Dylan says Aunt Ashley was really nice and funny. And now we can be a family, right? Natalie gathered her daughter close, looking at Stephen over her head. Can we? Would that be okay? Stephen thought of Ashley, of her longing for family, for roots. She would have loved knowing about you, he said softly. Both of you. Eleanor stood shakily. There's a box, in the attic. Baby things I kept from both of them. Pictures from the hospital before. She trailed off, hurrying from the room. I'd like to see them, Stephen said, if you're willing to share. Natalie nodded, wiping her eyes. It's what sisters do, right? Share memories? They spent hours going through the box. Tiny hospital bracelets, first photos of identical newborns, scraps of matching blankets. With each item, the weight of what had been lost and what might still be found grew heavier. Over the next few weeks, their lives began to intertwine in ways both small and profound. The children were inseparable, their bond growing stronger each day. Stephen found himself spending more and more time with Natalie, sharing stories about Ashley, discovering the similarities and differences between the twins. She used to do that exact same thing, he said one afternoon, watching Natalie absently twist her hair while reading. But she was left-handed, you're right-handed. Mirror twins, Natalie mused. That's what they call it when identical twins are opposites in some ways, like looking in a mirror. They were at the park, watching Dylan teach Katie his elaborate system for organizing the playground rocks by size and color. Marie sat nearby, pretending to read, but actually watching everything with satisfied eyes. Did she? Natalie hesitated. Was she happy, despite everything? Stephen thought carefully before answering. She had this theory that happiness was a choice, that you could let the hard parts of life define you, or you could choose to find joy anyway. Even at the end, his voice caught. She kept choosing joy. I wish I'd known her, Natalie whispered. Sometimes I feel like I did, like there are memories just out of reach. Is that crazy? No more crazy than Dylan and Katie somehow knowing each other's thoughts, Stephen said, watching the children share a sandwich without speaking, each taking alternating bites as if they'd rehearsed it. Marie joined them on the bench. You know, Ashley always said she felt like something was missing, like there was a piece of her out there somewhere. I guess she was right. The conversation was interrupted by Dylan's excited shout. Dad, Katie found a 4-leaf clover. Mom always said they were magic. Do you think she sent it? Stephen met Natalie's eyes, saw his own mix of joy and pain reflected there. Maybe she did, buddy. Maybe she's been helping us all along. That evening, after the children were finally persuaded to separate for bedtime, Natalie lingered at Stephen's door. I've been thinking, she said hesitantly. Would you both like to come to dinner tomorrow? I'd like to try making Ashley's lasagna recipe, the one Dylan keeps talking about. I'd like that, Stephen said, but fair warning, she never wrote it down. It was all in her head. I can only remember parts. Then we'll figure it out together, Natalie said. Make something new from the pieces we have. As he watched her walk to her car, Stephen felt something shift in his heart. Not a betrayal of Ashley, but perhaps a continuation, a new chapter in a story that wasn't quite finished. The wedding was as simple as the love story was complex. Just family. Dylan and Katie holding hands as they walked down the aisle together, Marie dabbing at her eyes in the front row, and a single photograph of Ashley placed carefully on an empty chair. "She should be here too," Natalie had insisted when they were planning. "She's the reason we found each other." The past 6 months had been a journey of discovery. Every day brought new revelations. How both twins had loved strawberry ice cream but hated strawberry jam. How they both sang off-key but with complete enthusiasm. How they'd both chosen teaching as their first career choice. Dylan and Katie had grown even closer, if that was possible. They finished each other's homework, shared inside jokes that no one else understood, and steadfastly refused to be enrolled in separate classes for the upcoming school year. "They're making up for lost time," Marie observed, "just like all of us." Eleanor had gradually become part of their lives too, though the relationship remained complicated. Her remorse was genuine, but some wounds took longer to heal than others. Still, she was trying, documenting every memory, every detail about the twins' earliest days, determined that no more family history would be lost. Now, standing before their small gathering, Stephen looked at Natalie and saw not Ashley's ghost, but a woman who had helped him learn to live again. Different from her twin in 100 small ways, but carrying that same capacity for joy, that same determination to choose happiness. "When I lost Ashley," he said in his vows, "I thought I'd never find love again. I didn't want to. But she always said that love multiplies. It doesn't divide. She was right. Loving you doesn't diminish what we had. It honors it. You've helped me keep my promise to her. To keep living. Really living." Natalie's voice shook as she responded. "I spent my whole life feeling like part of me was missing, never knowing why. Finding you and Dylan, it's like finding pieces of my sister I never knew I had. You've given me the family I always wanted, the connection I always felt was out there somewhere." Later, at the small reception in their backyard, Dylan and Katie presented their gift, a carefully crafted family tree they'd worked on in secret. It showed all the branches of their unusual family, with Ashley and Natalie's lines joining together through their children. "See?" Dylan pointed proudly. "Now we're officially all together." Marie raised her glass. "To family. The ones we're born with, the ones we choose, and sometimes, if we're very lucky, the ones we find against all odds." That night, after the children had finally fallen asleep in Dylan's room, their elaborate fort construction having tired them out at last, Stephen and Natalie stood in the garden. The stars seemed especially bright, as if Ashley was indeed watching over them. "Do you think she knows?" Natalie asked softly. "That her son is happy? That her sister finally found her way home?" Stephen wrapped his arms around his new wife, feeling the rightness of this moment. "I think she knew all along. I think maybe she's been guiding us from the start." Above them, a shooting star streaked across the sky. In their room, the children stirred simultaneously in their sleep, sharing dreams no one else could see. And somewhere, perhaps, Ashley smiled, knowing her family was complete at last.